Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the first video. I got a lot of interesting questions and feedback regarding your perceptions and what you guys are used to hearing actually about the narratives. And was my point. I wanted you to think critically, and I wanted to present facts and sort of have a different perspective. Best address the facts and have the most easiest explanation, like most direct explanation and analysis, rather than having to weave stories that, twist them to sort of fit a purpose agenda narrative, to making it somehow a divine behavior and elevated into some morally high standards. So I'm going to continue here with Aisha's analysis part 2. As we have discussed last video, we ended at basically where she is now widowed as a young adult, as a approximately 18-year-old, and here she is now transitioning into a completely different phase of life. Her basically entire makeup was having this ideal, larger than life kind of persona protecting her in that time. You could argue something of a father figure who was actually also protective, and a father figure sort of to the whole tribe, the prophet after all. So that was kind of what she lost. So it was a big orphaning and sort of losing a big support, as you will. We see her having sort of a cognitive dissonance reaction. It's a psychological phenomena. Basically, it's the discomfort where your beliefs, you might be holding two opposing beliefs and they clash with your actions or any new information that may be coming up. So, having two opposing ideas and you're now faced with that, and how do you reconcile that? So that's cognitive dissonance, how you essentially reconcile those two opposing beliefs. Either leading one to try and reduce this discomfort by changing their beliefs, their behaviors, or their perception. Basically, how they view that information or that event, they change that, or a combination of all of these. In a way, rationalizing or somehow explaining it. So when you have cognitive dissonance, when they're completely two opposing beliefs, you can't, believe both of them. They're contradicting one another, or they're in a way not compatible with each other. So how do you rectify that situation? How do you reconcile that situation? And psychologically, that's what we call cognitive dissonance. And you can see that in case with Aisha here, there's a certain level of cognitive dissonance happening, and how she eventually, rectifies these situations. And after losing her position, her favor, like status in a way, affect her. As you can see that, maybe in the time of her father, it was still barely 2 years. It was still ongoing, but like with the arrival of Umar, it does reduce a lot of the her maintenance, like whatever financial amount that she was receiving was reduced, and she was very upset with that. She was angry at that. Now was, as her nature, arguing and questioning and being loud. One thing in her character, you will notice that the grace or being diplomatic or being tactful are completely lacking in her character. That is not something you would associate with her character and how she conducted herself or how she behaved. There was definitely loud anger, outburst, jealousy, almost, having to fight. Like she always felt like she had to fight for her, self, for her rights, for her demand her. There was a lot of sense of entitlement and demanding in a way, as you could see, even though she was one of the wives of the prophet, of the many wives that he had, but she felt that she was entitled to a very different type of attention, relationship, exclusive, exclusivity, even in a polygamous situation. Even the fact, like afterwards when he died, she expected that, that position or that favoritism or that entitlement would continue. And as you have it, like in any political government where there's power, she was no longer in that position, and she no longer had that pull anymore where she could influence or demand those rights or those favors. So she was losing a bit financially, and she was angry about it. And there are some, crude comments that, like, Muhammad's I'm still here and all these people have already changed. Like all these, following caliphs, they've already showed their true colors. They don't even care, lamenting and wailing and loudly complaining, basically. We see this ongoing, her grudges and her familial rivalry or whatever you call like domestic disagreements with her larger family doesn't really end with the death of Muhammad. She still has the same attitudes towards the the relatives that she didn't like before, or now she extends that as well. Stories about how she continued to treat Fatima in a not such a great way, definitely like a stepmom. There was nothing motherly in her behavior. She also treated Ali, continued to treat Ali poorly, ignoring him, minimizing him in a way as much as she could in her, whatever was in her position. Basically, she thought by like, I won't even talk about him. I won't even mention his name. Like the silly ways that, show her discontent or show her attitude or give her, that she doesn't really like this guy by not mentioning his name. She will just talk about like someone, pretend she didn't see him, pretend she doesn't know what's happening, like not give him the time of the day in essence. Now we see that Usman is now the caliph, right? He's now followed Umar after some number of years. We have Usman here. And this caliph, I mean, largely known as corrupt, despotent caliph. People were not too happy with him anyway. There was a lot of like ill will that was going on because of a lot of his practices, corruption. So you can imagine the kind of power they have wielded by that time. It was very mighty power. So when this unrest started to grow, or dissatisfaction, the questioning, they were beginning to get really fed up and angry, but they were still trying not to openly get it out. Once it started getting out of hand, and there was a lot of back and forth where they're trying to reach some agreement with the Muslims of that time, the people, and they kept going back and forth. They would try to rally and speak in diplomatic. It was still within diplomatic ways. It wasn't working out. Either he wouldn't yield to their requests, or to the whatever solution was to fix the situation of corruption, and he also wouldn't step down, which just prolonged this this long miserable situation a little more than it needed to. He was unyielding to listen or fix it, or basically step down. And this created a lot of stress and tension within the Muslims. As you can imagine, there was a lot of like civil unrest that was happening within Medina itself. And now we have, and the larger air peninsula that they controlled, they have people coming out of like the other cities to, get like rally the support. That's how far and wide the news had spread about his poor handling, management, and corruption. Usman is now held up into his house. They forced him, or he was like besieged in his own house. He was locked up. They surrounded him, and they weren't letting him out until he conceded, and he didn't concede. He just wouldn't wave that white flag. In fact, he was writing for help for all these people to come and support him and to stop this revolt that had eventually risen up. And, from their frustrated anger, they were tired of this, but nobody came. No help came. Was held in, maybe for a week, 2 weeks, no, a whole 40 days. It was a long time. Even with the, with the camel news and the long distance writing letter, people didn't come. Nobody came to his help. They all knew what was going on. They just waited and watched, essentially, to see what would happen, come to its natural conclusion. Like it would just, play it out, basically. And what ended up happening was the revolt eventually broke into his house and attacked him, and he was assassinated. Right after the assassination, again, the whole uproar of like, Ali is now the next, please just do this, fix the situation. Like, here we're handing you like a broken government kind of situation. Like, how you see the presidency complaining like, we got a broken America. Well, they got like a really unhappy, shambles, messed up situation here. And, with him taking power and trying to diplomatically fix this huge mess that has happened, that has occurred, where, of course, all these people are related to one another as well. Like, these Arabs are related, As I'll explain more further in the story, you'll see how many, it's just like family, an extended family, and that's kind of what's going on in this government here. After the assassination of Usman and the coming into power of Ali, it seems to have triggered a sort of vengeful and a lot of, you could say, even like superficial righteous justification, which bubbled all the way up to now, in Aisha, where you just can't explain what happened to this woman. Here she was after the death of Muhammad, she was kind of sidelined politically. She was very unhappy mostly with how the situation was going on and everything, watching, trying to take some part and like, give out her opinions, going on about, what should have done. But she wasn't really jumping to any action. Like, even like, though she was really concerned about Uthman, she didn't really come running to him, she didn't jump into any action at that time, at that point. But once Ali's in the power, Here she is triggered into this, vengeful crusade, and she does end up rallying a whole lot of people to go to war. To go to war, basically, and take and usurp power back from Ali. Like, she just didn't think he was the right person. He would never be the right person. Somehow him being in power really irked her, and suddenly this culminated into this crusade. The assassination of Usman, this caliph, who was kind of, as we mentioned already, desperate, and the people were already unhappy. It was kind of a long overdue of like back and forth, satisfaction. The people were getting fed up, they were getting tired. Come and jump in at that time and politically try to save something here, diplomatically or elsewhere or any other thing. We see that he was also locked up for the end of it for the 40 days, but it's not as urgent, the matter to her at that point. But when he was assassinated, coming into power, somehow that really triggers something in her. And let's analyze what that could have happened. What is this, what happened psychologically going on? Something of which you would say is long held anger or some sort of feeling of attribution that she wanted to play out. You just can't figure out, because this is not, let's see, this is not an angry letter that she wrote to him, like an angry tweet or an angry text that in today's modern time that you would do, which would still be really tactless, like, that would still be crude, coming from a position of what she was supposedly in that time. Neither was it like some majlis and she got up and, slapped one person and they were like, oh, this woman decided to go the path of, violence and rally everybody. Like, she basically badmouthed him, said he was such a this, he's wrong, he's breaking the rules. Like, I don't know what kind of call to propagandas that she had, slogans, to like rally up people to pick up arms and, go. It was not just like one evening of gossip that just went out of hand and they just got all angry and they got up and like went and, murdered 3-4 people because they were so angry. She had, enough time, days, weeks, to rally up forces from different places, from different cities, travel back and forth on, camel. This is not a train or airplane. And it was a very long, thought out, meticulous plan. That's my point here. She really went for it. And that's what I would like you to really sit and think with. Like, I'm going to come to this, I'm really going to analyze this point. So I want you to sit and focus from all the perspectives that I want to mention before I come to the conclusion here. It has this righteous anger and this toxic demand and implication for fighting for justice. Like, she thinks she's holding up the justice banner and somehow she's, justified it in her head. When you have cognitive dissonance, like you're going to war, you're going against like essentially your family members, her own brother, albeit like a half stepbrother, fighting on the opposite sides, her cousins are on this side, nothing mattered. What mattered here was her righteous anger and retribution that, oh my God, what is this like, what is this excuse that suddenly she's so incensed? Oh, because they didn't, he didn't really question Osman's and really send them to jail or something, his assassins. So what she decides to do is like, let me just go and assassinate everybody else myself. I'm going to like fight for justice. I'm going to take it into my own hands and I'm just going to like, 10,000 other Muslims die in this war. That's justice in her mind. So we're going to analyze this even more. Let's go ahead. Let's remember now, this is 24 years post Muhammad's death, right? And there's been a lot of events, pent-up anger from growing up, from her life leading up towards where she's been sidelined. She hasn't enjoyed the position. She's not like as she was. She's been watching, herself essentially get reduced, essentially lose her favors, lose that financial position. So she's seeing that everybody else here is up there in the headlines. They're all getting the spotlight. They're all like, one by one, living out their victory or whatever, in return for all that they sacrificed. Like, now they get to enjoy the fruits of their hard-earned labor. Like, this is how God will give them all this power to rule. They'll be rulers. They're going to enjoy the financial power, the women, the headline, the gossip, like really enjoy the celebrity status and the power and the position that you're holding because of all the sacrifices they made earlier in the life for like Islam, for Muhammad. And here Aisha, she got nothing, basically. She's got nothing. And here she's slowly over the years been forgotten about, sort of, even you could say, become a little bit irrelevant at this point in time. And what triggers her is now Ali is coming into power, everything's going on, and it's somehow the sole target of her vengeance and anger is this one man, Ali, right? Nobody else did anything wrong. It's only Ali who's done everything here. So he's basically the target of all of her pent up dissatisfaction, loss of her entitlement, loss of her favors, loss of her position. And here he's now gets to become the Khalifa and the leader. So I think that kind of really hit something there. She just couldn't take that. A good moment to pause, and also let's look a little bit what Islam really does for all these, amazing people who are like the first Muslims, the first relatives, and how does it really morally up-level you? And as you can see clearly from all these actions that it doesn't really do much. They were just as warring, angry, fighting people before they were fighting for a different ideology, which was believers and non-believers, according to them, basically an ideology. And they were willing to take up arms against their family, relatives, and basically kill, right? They were ready to shed blood blindly, their own son. Abu Bakr was about to kill his own son in one of the battles. I believe it was Uhud. Aisha has grown up seeing all of this, family turning against family because of something that they believed and justified it, completely. And you would think all these years, now we have this beautiful, the whole Arabs, they're basically, the whole country is Muslim. They're just expanding, these are essentially all your relatives at one point, either through your husband or your father, just your own extended family, right? What we see end up happening is just as they were before, now they have a different ideology, and they've rationalized it in their own heads, it's not believers and non-believers and Muslims, and that's a big deal, that's the only justified reason. Now we have we'll just pick any ideology, and now we are not agreeing, and we are within completely right if we just go and shed blood, violently kill them, assassinate, slaughter all these people. So that's what Islam has done. And it's interesting because now that we're in the month of Ramadan, and I know maybe a lot of you might have watched these Muslim Islamic series like the Yaqeen Institute. I've seen one or two videos that popped up. And it's interesting because you see how their PR Muslim scholars will be picking every little thing. It's all scaring you into thinking about every little thing you're doing, that your hand's gonna talk against you. Did you hurt somebody? Every little action of yours, you just don't know what's going to happen. Everything, your whole life's work would just be lost because you might have done something so silly and stupid, and without even realizing, without even intention, basically, without realizing that what you were doing. And just like that, you're going to be tormented in the grave. You're going to go to the hell. You're going to be burning in hell forever. That's what they want to tell you. They're going to shame you, scare you into you don't even do your wudu properly. Your wudu, you don't even do your wudu properly, exactly from this level, and you could be losing your whole prayer. And they're encouraging essentially other people to judge you as well. And here, you don't know what's going to happen in the grave. You could accidentally slander somebody, or intentionally, just talk one thing about here to the other person, something you said bad, and it caused just some hurt feelings. Right? That's hurt feelings, but that could lose all your good deeds, and you could go to hell. You could be burned eternity. So you essentially see how you're cowered into a corner, you're shamed, you're scared of everything that you're doing. And essentially you have to think and overthink, really you just paralyzed by fear to do anything, because you might make a mistake and you can lose everything, all the good deeds you've done, and go to hell. And I want you to think about it, because as we are discussing the story of Aisha, right? Scholar Aisha here, who eventually becomes Scholar Aisha. At this point, she's not a Scholar Aisha. She's just Aisha who thought she might have a political career here. She thought she had a political, powerful career, alongside all the other Muslims that got, to live out their best life, basically. And she was not really getting to do any of that. She's kind of sidelined. And here, leader Aisha thought she would enjoy those benefits. And here you see leader Aisha. Is she really concerned about all these small things? Is she really overthinking every action? Is she what Scholar Aisha doesn't pray 5 times a day? Is she not asking for dua? Please God, please Allah, guide me, guide me to the right path. Anger, having bad thoughts about somebody, that could put you in hell. Well, look at leader Aisha here. Leader Aisha has a lot of hate, a lot of anger issues, and it's just continued like from day one, past to dying, past Islam, like being the, everything. Here she is. So Leader Aisha here, we have much going here. She is completely fine rallying people against who at that time was a leader of these people. She was okay with like creating extreme civil unrest, violence, bloodshed. In a way, you can see that she even wanted to test, like, were these people, do I still have that influence? Like, are they still going to follow me and listen? And when she saw that they were ready and, they were calling her, you be our leader, she was like on cloud nine. She didn't care if she was going to die, who dies, what's going on. She thought, I'm going down as a hero. Finally, I'll be recognized. It all works out. Like, now I see why everything happened to me, because I get to live out, that fantasy. Other thing that Muslims do a lot that you might not, maybe you might do it, maybe you don't. A lot of people, when they make any decisions of any significance, something in their work or personal life or anything that they don't have the answer to, or they're not too sure, which one is better, they have a prayer that they do, istikhara prayer. And I wonder if Leader Aisha here was doing istikhara prayers. Should I go to battle? Should I? Allah, what do you think? Should I go into battle? Here she's full-heartedly convinced. Like, Leader Aisha doesn't care about these, every moment, everything. And neither does the other Muslims. Neither are these other people. But here you have been, indoctrinated and cowered into a corner, questioning every move, scared of doing anything. Literally, fear is their business. And right now it's at the peak because it's Ramadan. So you're like literally paying them so you don't go to hell. Paying them so that you just like somehow free yourself from any possible mistakes you might have done. I went like, but look here, Aisha took a battle and killed 10,000 people, Muslims, who were her relatives included. And what were what was the long-term effect of this? Like, that's kind of hard to quantify, but I don't think it was good. So one interesting point to note was actually, if you thought that she would have listened, no, she didn't listen. Actually, some of the other wives, including Salam, actually told her not to go. Don't get involved. Don't, do it. So she did it despite it. This was not something that was a very rational or logical or, and in any way that was something about like the greater good. This was really all about personal and a very personally motivated, vengeance seeking and egotistical sort of actions. Why not? Like, if you really think about why not, this is kind of what she's been seeing from like when she was, since she was a young girl. That you all have seen Muhammad and his call, and you've seen bloodshed, you've seen war, you've seen families fighting each other, you've seen battles for this ideology. They're absolutely ready to go up in arms and do what they think it needs to be done. They're completely morally justified. They've rationalized it. So here they are. So she's kind of seen that and done that. Seen how they've kind of justified in their heads. So when you see something like this happening, even though it's like crazy and it seems like ridiculous, like how could a Muslim, wife of the Prophet do such an act? But you see, like, that's kind of what that's how they always did business. That's how they always done things. And she thought she was completely right. And why wouldn't she? Right? That's how they've always been doing it. After this defeat, and she was like physically, escorted out and back, you can say it was like a big hit to her self-esteem. And here's where you can see cognitive dissonance playing out again. She thought like, hold on, this is not fitting with the narrative. Okay, God didn't make me win. What's going on here? Now, in order to fit the narrative, after quite a number of years, she now looks back on it and says, yes, it was kind of a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. And, as bad as it, was, she doesn't make it seem as bad. She's like, yeah, it was a mistake and I didn't have to do it. It's not as, shocking what she did to her, it seems. If she had won, I think she would have had a very completely different story. I don't think she would have ever regretted any of this. She was like, yeah, I was completely right. I was fighting for the thing, gave the narrative here. And the narrative now was, well, I shouldn't have gone to battle, but whatever, I did it for the good reasons. She was still somehow justifying it. Event, you can imagine, like, most of the Muslim community and people kind of had a absolute, like, you could say, I wouldn't say cancel. This is not a cancel culture here because she did enjoy a certain position that you couldn't take away. But she was definitely, you know, even further like retreated and just not more prominent. Like they've taken away, it was an extremely humiliating, disrespectful, shameful kind of behavior, essentially. You know, that they just, the rest of the Muslims were kind of shocked, and they just kind of like collectively, rather than seek retribution and like take her to court or anything, you know, for like all this heinous crimes, they just quietly ignore it somehow. Now we see her, you know, when her dreams of being leader Aisha has been squashed, no longer holding the position or the favor or the, you know, support or the respect of the general public Muslims. Guess what happens? Now we have the evolution of, she turns herself and creates this identity of scholar Aisha, right? Now we have this new scholar Aisha identity coming up. She reinvents basically her self. And now a couple years later, we have all these narrations coming out of her being this. And now we see a little different side, because you can imagine now she is here after that rep of that she's got. And now it's in her, for her own sake and for her own reputation, now it's up to her to spin the narrative where she looks good. And now that's exactly what happens. She's the narrator of all the hadiths, and it's up to her how she spins or how she narrates that, you know, controlling the narrative, essentially. Her semblance of having some grace or some legacy, or painting herself as, you know, very innocent, naive, and always wanting in her heart to be good, but just somehow always doing, I'm somehow always at just being bad, or, you know, like scandals, or just extremely loud, toxic type of behaviors, fighting, anger, you know, it was just kind of long-standing. It was just natural that it would have just play out to violence as well. Like, that's not very surprising. It's what we have here now with all of the hadiths talking about, you know, all these many generations later, and scholars now, her scandals are a little blip on her radar, but they forget like the immensity or the extreme violence or bloodshed that led to this. It was completely methodical. It was thought out. Well aware, and you know, you can't excuse it as being a child, because she was not a child when that happened. She was somewhere in her adult life. Her hadith always, where she is, you know, presented herself as the favorite wife, as important, as, you know, her husband's always infatuated with her, how she's somehow, the marriage was divinely ordained, like somehow to recover her, you know, tarnished reputation and loss of face or image, or bringing, or whatever shame she brought, you know, to her family and the Muslim ummah, whatever. So that's what you see happening here, is that she's the first PR Muslim here who's now trying to fix this image and leave somehow, you know, some sort of a hollow legacy here. There are theories that she might have been assassinated, even though she was a really old woman, just because Muawiyah at that time didn't want any hiccups or any more scandals or drama. And I wouldn't blame them, you know, like, this woman was loud and always contentious, and she's kind of shown that she's had a history of, you know, like wherever Aisha goes, there's somehow some scandal going on. So there are stories or narratives where she was assassinated. And so the rest of the story, which also makes sense. She's an old woman, 67. You know, she's said what she has to say. She said a lot, in fact, in her hadiths and her narrative. So she could have just simply died of natural causes. You know, like, one point I want to bring up is, like, when Ali was assassinated, you know, she's not jumping to any battles, or shouldn't even say a word. So that whole righteous anger and, like, you know, wanting to bring justice to society, you see that just simply die down with that one incident where, you know, where it played to her favor, which is basically Ali being the target. So now the second, you know, now Ali has, you know, been assassinated. We don't see her getting, you know, losing any sleep or sweating too much about it. So there you go. That was kind of an interesting analysis of what Muslims and Aisha essentially was like. Islam really didn't do much on her, didn't give her any moral up-leveling. They were just as fighting, warring Arabs, and you see that how they justified it in their heads, and they continue to do what they need to do, you know, explain the narrative that suited them, continue to, you know, rally power, continue to, like, try to gain favors, keep her position up. And the other wives, 100% could have done the same, but nobody else has any sort of history or mention or anything like that. It's only her, right? Out of all these women, it's only her. So she had a need for attention, extreme insecurity, and the culmination of a lot of vengeance coming out in some righteous anger and retribution essentially going to war. You know, this is like the level, that's like the next level family feud. She's ready to go to war and blood and shed blood. And you know, all you lot other Muslims, that was just a mistake. That was just a mistake. That's all she has to say for you, right? Like, and for the other Muslims, I want to say, you know, think about it. Like, I just want you to think about these incidents where she's still somehow, you know, I don't know if Muhammad still says that, like if he knew all this was going to happen, because he already says that in the beginning, oh, she's guaranteed Jannah and they're the women of Jannah. So I want to say to all you women, you know, Muslim women and guys and girls who are like worrying themselves sick over the smallest things, you know, you don't need to watch and like live in fear of, oh my God, what's going to happen today? What if happens if I say this? Oh my God, I took some toothpaste, I swallowed it. Is my fast okay? Is it not okay? Am I going to be tormented in hell? Your moral levels are far superior than these Arabs will ever be. Before Islam, during Islam, after Islam, your moral level, your amazing spirit, your amazing, you know, open-minded, kind-hearted, sensitive, you know, will always be far superior. You don't need to worry yourself sick about like, oh my God, this has like this has alcohol. Is it like changed? Is it some kind of other, you know, flavor? Is it this like liquor, chocolate? It's just the most hilarious nonsense things. They're worrying themselves sick. Every small decisions they want to do istikhara because they don't want to, you know, somehow accidentally end up in hell. But trust me, after these history lessons and all this examination, you are far better off, far superior. Okay? You don't need to worry yourself sick. You can relax, you can breathe freely and live your life. And understand that this Allah allowed all these things to happen and he's still taking all these people up in Jannah, right? Like they're still getting the VIP. So like open your eyes and realize that you're not some second-class citizens, okay? And Quraysh is up there. They're the VIPs. That's not how it works. Understand your own self-worth. And I'm going to end this video here. And I'm really interested and I'm so happy to see your comments and questions and, you know, all this discussion happening. Keep it up and I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, yes. And don't forget to subscribe. Bye.